Good morning and welcome back, dear students, to another session of English language class. In the last day, I have already explained you the pattern related to the ISC class 11 and class 12 board examinations pattern. Today, I'll be directly leading you towards different parts of grammar. We begin with the transformation of sentences from as soon as, the conversion of as soon as into no sooner than, hardly when, and scarcely when. Please note down here, as soon as is written together, whereas there is a dot in between no sooner than, as well as hardly, a few dots, then when, scarcely, a few dots, and when is placed after that, which very clearly indicate they are not written together. No sooner than is not written together at all. In the same way, hardly when is not written together, and scarcely when also is not written together. There are certain words in between them. Let's now just see the general rule related to the conversion. Let us see. The first part to be remembered is observe the tense in the subordinate clause. The same tense should be followed. The first thing when you get a statement to be converted from as soon as to no sooner or hardly or scarcely when, the first thing that the students will have to observe is the tense of the subordinate clause. You know what the main clause and what the subordinate clause is. The main clause that brings out the complete meaning by itself. The clause that brings out the complete meaning in itself is called the main clause. Whereas the clause which will not bring the complete meaning but a part of the larger sentence is called the subordinate clause. So first point that you have to observe when you have to convert a sentence from as soon as to no sooner or hardly or scarcely, the first point to be observed is the tense in the subordinate clause. And the same tense should be followed. Suppose we see the simple present tense with the statement as soon as. When you convert the statement into no sooner than, you have to make use of the same simple present tense. That is, the base form of the verb has to be used there. That is the first point to be remembered. Whereas if the statement is given in simple past, you have to make use of the simple past itself when you convert the statement into no sooner than, hardly when, or scarcely when, and the same is applicable to past perfect as well. You will have to make use of the same past perfect tense, that is had plus third form of the verb to be used. These are the three cases you can convert the statement from as soon as to no sooner than, hardly when, or scarcely when. Three tense. First one is it must be either simple present or it has to be in simple past or past perfect. Such kind of sentences, such kind of the tense of the statement only can be converted into no sooner than, hardly when, or scarcely when. For an example, let us begin when the subordinate clause is given in simple past. The tense of the statement is in simple past. Let's take an example. As soon as the train arrived, the passengers rushed into the compartment. Observe the question once again. As soon as the train arrived, which doesn't bring the complete meaning by itself. So therefore that is the subordinate clause. Whereas we have the main clause, the passengers rushed into the compartment, which makes a complete sense in itself. And if the clause is able to make the complete sense in itself, that is called the main clause, whereas the other one is called the subordinate clause. Now observe the tense in the subordinate clause. We see here, as soon as the train arrived. Arrived is a second form of the verb, which very clearly indicate the given statement is in the simple past. So let's see how we have to convert such kind of sentences into no sooner than as well as hardly when. As soon as, so now observe the tense in the subordinate clause. As soon as the train arrived, second form of the verb is used. So the tense is in simple past and we use did plus base form of the verb. Always remember, whenever you make use of did in the statement, the main verb must be in its base form, because we have already made use of the second form of the verb. Do is the base form, the second form of it is did. And whenever you make use of did in a statement, the next part of the verb must be in its base form. So therefore our answer will be So as soon as will be replaced with the no sooner. The first point to be remembered, you are substituting as soon as with the no sooner. So as soon as will be substituted or replaced with the no sooner. So no sooner, immediately after no sooner you have to make use of did. Please remember, whereas it was when it was in as soon as statement, as soon as and immediately as soon as the subject was used. That won't be the case when you convert the statement into no sooner. Immediately after no sooner, if it is in past tense, you will have to make use of did. If it is in past perfect, certainly you will be replacing did with had. And if it is in simple present, you will be making use of a do or does depending on the subject of the statement. So therefore here, no sooner, immediately after no sooner, you have to make use of did since the statement is in simple past. Simple past, therefore you have to make use of did and immediately after the subject. As I have already told you, when you came to the statement with as soon as, immediately after as soon as, it is the train that is a subject. That won't be the case when you convert the statement into no sooner. So immediately after no sooner, you will be making use of did if the statement is in a simple past, and after that subject will be used. So this order must be very distinctly and clearly followed. When you come to no sooner, the statement begins with no sooner. If the tense of the statement is in simple past, immediately after that you have to make use of did, whereas it was the subject immediately after no as soon as. When you come to no sooner, immediately after no sooner, make use of the second form of the verb, that is did. So no sooner, immediately after no sooner did, then place the subject, and immediately after that base form of the verb. As I have already indicated you, already we have made use of did. When you made use of the second form of the verb, and the next verb must be in its base form. You cannot make use of two second forms in the same statement. So therefore, after subject, base form of the verb, then comma is substituted with than. That is another point to be remembered. With the as soon as statement, the clauses are always separated by a comma. Subordinate clause is separated by the main clause. That is what we saw here. As soon as the train arrived, the subordinate clause is substituted with the, separated with the main clause. The passengers rushed into the compartment with a comma. And this comma will be replaced with the than. Please listen the word. It is than, not then. THEN is then. So what is supposed to be used with the no sooner is than, not then. So please note the spelling of it. If you make use of then in the place of than, certainly you will be getting no mark at all, because your answer is absolutely wrong, because both these words have two different meanings. So substitute or comma is substituted with than, and then after that make use of the main clause. There will be no change with related to the main clause. When you convert the statement from as soon as to no sooner, main clause remains exactly as it is. There is no change with related to the main clause at all. Don't touch the main clause. Write the main clause exactly as it is. So therefore our answer will be, no sooner did the train arrive. So we have substituted as soon as with no sooner. This is what was our question. As soon as the train arrived. So as soon as is replaced with the no sooner. And immediately after that I told, after no sooner, place did. If the statement is in simple past, make use of did. And after did, the subject. So that is what? Did, then the subject. So no sooner did the train arrive. So the comma that is supposed to be substituted with than. Than the passengers rushed into the compartment. So therefore, once again note down the answer. No sooner did the train arrive than the passengers rushed into the compartments. Hope you are clear of how to convert the statement from as soon as to no sooner. And the same rule is applied when you have to change the statement from as soon as to hardly or scarcely. The only thing is no sooner takes than, whereas hardly as well as scarcely makes when. So that is the only difference. Otherwise the rule is exactly the same. So therefore, now let's see an example with the word starting with, or you have to transform the sentence from as soon as to hardly when or scarcely when. So let's see an example given here. As soon as the minister took the oath, the spectators started applauding. As soon as the minister took the oath, comma, the spectators started applauding. So here also the same rule you will have to follow. See the tense of the subordinate clause. Subordinate clause over here is as soon as the minister took the oath. That doesn't bring the complete meaning by itself. At the same time, it has a subject, it has a predicate. So therefore, certainly it is a clause. But the clause does not bring out the complete meaning by itself. And when the clause doesn't bring out the complete meaning in itself, that becomes the subordinate clause. And let us observe the next one. The spectators started applauding. The spectators started applauding can stand independently by itself, because it brings out the complete meaning in itself. So therefore, that is the main clause. We have nothing to do with the main clause. All the changes that we make when you transform the sentence from as soon as to hardly when, scarcely when, or no sooner than, all the changes are made over there in the subordinate clause. Nothing or no change we bring in the main clause. So let's see the same statement here. As soon as the minister took the oath, the main subordinate clause is separated by the main clause with the main clause by placing a comma. So that is what this is. The comma is placed, and this is a compulsory rule. If you have the subordinate clause before the main clause, you will have to separate both the clauses by placing a comma. That rule has to be very clearly followed, because it is a compulsory rule to be followed. I reiterate, suppose we have the subordinate clause before the main clause. If main clause comes first and subordinate clause comes after that, comma is not very essential. Whether you place the comma or you do not place the comma, that is not a matter at all. But if subordinate clause comes before the main clause, it is compulsory, it is mandatory that you have to place the comma to separate the subordinate clause from the main clause. So let us go through our example once again. As soon as the minister took the oath, we have the second form of the verb here, took. So which very clearly indicate the given statement is in the simple past. So as soon as the minister took the oath, the spectators started applauding. So now we will be converting the statement first with hardly. So as soon as will be replaced by hardly. As we exchanged as soon as with no sooner, in the same way here as soon as will be replaced by the word hardly. Then immediately after that, we know, since the statement is in simple past, you have to make use of did. The structure is same as we followed the same pattern in no sooner than. Immediately after no sooner, we place the did. And the same procedure has to be followed here as well. So therefore, hardly did, and after that the subject. After did, place subject. So it was not the case with the statement when the statement was in as soon as. As soon as, immediately after as soon as, we made use of the subject. That is not the case when we do it into, or we change the statement into hardly, scarcely, or no sooner. So the same procedure, the same pattern will be followed. So hardly or scarcely, immediately after that it did, then make use of the subject, then base form of the verb. This point has to be very clearly observed. We have already made use of the second form of the verb. Whenever we make use of did in a statement, the next verb must be in its base form. Often the students speak differently, no? He did not came to the school yesterday. Can that statement be right? Never it can be right. It is he did not come to the school, because we have already made use of did. And whenever you make use of did, that is the second form of the verb, next one must be, the next form of the verb must be in its base form. So that rule has to be clearly followed. So they make use of the base form of the verb, and immediately after that substitute comma with the when. No sooner we substituted comma with than. Whereas when the statement is hardly, we will be substituting the comma with the when. And after that, main clause exactly as it is. As I have already intimated you that we make no change with related to the main clause at all. Or main clause remains exactly as it is. Once again, let us go through the rule. Hardly. Suppose you are making use of the sentence with the word hardly. So make use of hardly. Immediately after hardly, as the statement is in simple past. First thing to be observed is, observe the subordinate clause, verb in the subordinate clause. It can come in three different ways. Either it can be simple present, it can be simple past, or past perfect. So the first thing when you get a question to be observed is the tense in the subordinate clause. If it is in simple past, which is the second form of the verb, naturally make use of did immediately after the word heard, hardly or scarcely. then after that place the subject, then base form of the verb. As we have already made use of did, then the next verb must be in its base form, and after that substitute comma with when. As you make use of hardly, hardly is followed by when, scarcely also is followed by when. So therefore when, and let the main clause remain as it is. There will be no comma because comma we have already substituted with the word when. So therefore let us see the answer now. Hardly did the minister take the oath. Here it was the minister took the oath. That was the second form of the verb. We converted the second form of the verb into the base form of the verb as we have already made use of did, which is the second form of do. So when you made use of the second form, that is did, the next verb, that is took, is changed into take in its base form. So hardly did the minister take the oath. I hope the students are getting cleared off why took is changed into take. The reason is we have already made use of the second form of the verb, that is did. So the next verb is in simple present or in its base form. So therefore hardly did the minister take the oath. After that main clause is substituted by the subordinate clause where the comma is replaced. We immediately make use of when, and the main clause exactly as it is, that is the spectators started applauding. So the answer is hardly did the minister take the oath when the spectators started applauding. Same is the case with when we convert the statement into scarcely. The only difference is hardly will be changed to scarcely and the rest of the rule exactly as it is. So the answer will be scarcely did the minister take the oath. Comma is substituted with when the spectators started applauding. The main clause remains exactly as it is. If you are sure of changing or conversion from as soon as to no sooner, now we will see the conversion of the statement, transformation of the statement from no sooner to as soon as. So far we saw from as soon as we changed the statements into no sooner than, or hardly when, or scarcely when. Now the next part is we are going to see it or do it the just opposite of it. Statement will be in no sooner, and no sooner statement how to convert into as soon as. That is what we will see just now. Let's see the statement given here. No sooner did he see his friend than he embraced him. Earlier we saw the statement that was given in as soon as. As soon as statement it was. Now we see the statement in no sooner. No sooner did he see his friend than he embraced him. The rule is the same, very simple. So in the previous part what we did was, so we substitute no sooner here with the as soon as. As we did in the another one, as soon as was substituted with no sooner. The same way the word no sooner will be substituted with the as soon as. And we know that immediately after as soon as it is not did, do or had. No sooner it is, as soon as, immediately after as soon as it is a subject. That is a point to be very clearly observed. Immediately after as soon as, make use of the subject. As soon as, that is followed by subject, then after that the second form of the verb. Please remember, we will be changing this did. So therefore, we will have to make the verb in its second form. When you convert the statement into as soon as, please observe the rules once again. Place no sooner, substitute no sooner with as soon as. Immediately after as soon as, it is a subject to be placed. And after the subject, second form of the verb. Immediately after the subject, make use of the second form of the verb. Then than is substituted with a comma. In the other case, we know that as soon as what we did was, so here than is substituted with a comma. This than will be replaced by a comma and the main clause remains as it is. There will be no change at all over there in the main clause. We don't test the main clause at all, even if the statement is in as soon as, no sooner, hardly or scarcely. The main clause remains exactly as it is. Observe here, no sooner did he see his friend. That is a subordinate clause. He embraced him. That is the main clause, because he embraced him brings out the complete meaning in itself. The clause can stand independently, whereas this clause, that is no sooner did he see his friend That does not stand independently at all. It has to depend on the main clause in order to bring out its meaning completely. So all the changes that we make will be in the subordinate clause, and the main clause remains exactly as it is. Once again, let us go through the rule. So as no sooner will be substituted with the word as soon as. Immediately after as soon as, make use of the subject. Then the second form of the verb, and remove than from there and place a comma in its place. Than is substituted with a comma and place the main clause exactly as it is. So our answer will be as soon as he saw his friend. We substituted no sooner with as soon as. After that the subject here he. So he, second form of the verb, did see. So second form of the verb, we will substitute did see, did and base form of the verb. That will be changed into the second form of the verb. So his friend, he embraced him. The main clause remains exactly as it is. He embraced him. So far we saw when the subordinate clause was in simple past. That is the second form of the verb. And I hope you are clear of it. Now we will see when the subordinate clause is in past perfect. As I have already told you, the tense can be simple present, simple past or past perfect. Mostly in the examinations we see they give the statement either in simple past to convert it to no sooner than, hardly when or scarcely when, or the statement is in past perfect, but there are exceptional cases. There are some years where they have given the statement in a simple present as well. So therefore we should know all the three forms the conversion. So first part we have already seen, that is when the subordinate clause is in simple past, that is in the second form of the verb. Now we are going to see when the subordinate clause is in past perfect. We already saw that we make all the changes over there with the subordinate clause and we untouch the main clause. So now let's see an example given here. As soon as Joe had seated himself. See, observe the tense here in the subordinate clause. The subordinate clause is as soon as Joe had seated himself, which does not bring out the complete meaning in itself. So therefore it is a subordinate clause. We have the subject as Joe, we have the predicate as soon as had seated himself. So we have the subject, we have the predicate. We have the main verb here, had seated. So that is a clause. At the same time, this clause does not bring out the complete meaning in itself. It has to depend on the another clause to get its meaning to be completely fulfilled. That is what he asked for some water. So when we come to that part, he asked for some water. The clause makes a complete sense in itself. So therefore that is the main clause, and we do not make any change over there in the main clause. So as we saw in the previous questions, that is when the tense was in simple past, that is in the simple past. So we saw the rule. The same rule is applicable here too. So let's see here. As soon as Joe had seated himself, had plus base form of the verb. Had plus base form of the verb indicate the tense in a past perfect. So the statement here is in past perfect. That is what the heading is given here. When subordinate clause is in past perfect. Here the tense of the subordinate clause. That is as soon as Joe had seated himself. Had plus third form of the verb. So which very clearly indicate the given statement is in a past perfect. So what is the rule to be followed here? That is what the next part is. Exactly as we did in the previous one. As soon as is substituted here with no sooner. And immediately after no sooner we have made use of did when the statement was in a simple past, whereas here the statement is in past perfect. So therefore we cannot make use of did. In the place of did you will be making use of had. Observe this particular point. The previous part we saw the statement was in simple past. When the statement was in simple past, we made use of did immediately after no sooner. Whereas when the statement is in past perfect, had plus third form of the verb, what have we to do is, we have to make use of had immediately after no sooner. That is the only change. So no sooner, had, and immediately after did in the previous sentence we made use of the subject. And the same thing is to be observed here too. So after had is subject, then third form of the verb. It's a mistake here, not the base form of the verb. We make use of the third form of the verb. Okay, when it is in past perfect, a printing mistake. So I apologize. It is not the base form of the verb. We have to make use of the third form of the verb. Past perfect, always the verb will be in its third form. So once again let me state, this is by a mistake, it is not the base form of the verb, it is supposed to be the third form of the verb, and immediately after that comma is substituted with than. That is what we did previously also. So this comma that will be substituted with than when you make use of no sooner, and the main clause remains exactly as it is. Don't make any change over there in the main clause. So therefore our answer will be no sooner had Joe seated himself. Had Joe seated himself. See, it is not the base form that is used here, it is the third form is used. So no sooner had Joe seated himself than he asked for some water. So we make use of than. We made use of than in the place of comma. Comma is substituted with than, and the main clause remains exactly as it is. That is, he asked for some water. So we have already converted from as soon as to no sooner than. The next part we will see as soon as statement. When the tense of the statement is in past perfect, how to convert that into hardly when as well as scarcely when. So that is what we will see just now. As soon as I heard a knock at the door, I switched on the light. As soon as I had heard a knock. Again see, had heard, had plus third form of the verb. The statement is in a past perfect, and that is what the subordinate clause is. As soon as I had heard a knock at the door, which does not make the complete sense in itself, it has to depend on the main clause. The main clause over here is I switched on the light. When I say I switched on the light, the clause can stand independently. So this clause, the clause with the as soon as, beginning with the as soon as, has to depend on the main clause in order to get its meaning to be completed. So now let's see, as soon as I had heard a knock at the door, there is the place we make the changes. So the same way, as soon as will be substituted with the hardly or scarcely depending on the statement. If it is to start with the hardly, immediately let's begin first with the hardly. So as soon as is substituted with the hardly, immediately after that the same process what we did with no sooner, place had, and after had subject. Please remember, with as soon as it is a subject, then the past participle form of the verb. That is not the case when the statement begins with the hardly, scarcely or no sooner. So hardly, immediately after hardly we make use of had, then the subject, then the third form of the verb. Immediately after that the third form of the verb, and comma certainly will be substituted with the than. The comma will be removed, and in its place we make use of the word than, 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 and after that the main clause is placed. Main clause is placed exactly as it is without making any change over there. So our answer will be hardly. Immediately after hardly we know that we have to make use of had. After that is subject. Subject here is I. As soon as I had heard, I is the subject, so place I. Then after that the third form of the verb, here heard and heard, had a knock at the door, comma is removed, and it is substituted with the word when I switched on the light. Once again the answer is hardly had I had a knock at the door when I switched on the light. Same is the case with when the statement begins with the scarcely. The same rule is applied. In the place of as soon as, it will be substituted with the word scarcely. So scarcely, immediately after scarcely, had, then subject, third form of the verb, had, scarcely had I heard a knock at the door, comma is removed, and in its place we made use of the word when, and the main clause is placed exactly as it is. I switched on the light. So the answer will be scarcely had I heard a knock at the door when I switched on the light. That is what the rule related to when the statement given is in past perfect. We have seen the transformation of sentence from as soon as to no sooner than, hardly when, and scarcely when the statement is in a past perfect. When the statement is in past perfect, how to convert it to no sooner than, hardly when, and scarcely when from as soon as. Now what are we going to do is, the statement will be given in no sooner. From there you will have to convert the statement into as soon as. When the no sooner statement is given, let's see. No sooner had he opened the door than the principal arrived. A statement given over here. No sooner had he opened the door than the principal arrived. So let's see what are the changes that you will have to bring over here, exactly as we have seen with related to the simple past. Yes, the same rule to be followed here. The only thing that in simple past we make use of the second form of the verb did, and in past perfect always it is a had plus third form of the verb is used. So therefore did will be changed and its place will be taken by had. That is the only difference, that is the only change. Let's see here. So as soon as we have to substitute with no sooner we have to substitute with as soon as, and immediately after as soon as we know that it is a subject to be placed. That is not the case with no sooner. Immediately after no sooner, if it is simple past, we make use of did. If it is past perfect, we have to make use of had. Whereas when the statement is in as soon as, immediately after as soon as, we make use of the subject. Then had plus third form of the verb, that is what the past participle form of the verb. Had plus third form of the verb will be placed immediately after that, and than is substituted with a comma. Than will be replaced with a comma, and the main clause exactly as it is. Once again, let us go through the rule. So the conversion is, the transformation is in this way. No sooner will be substituted with as soon as, and immediately after as soon as we make use of the subject. Then past participle form of the verb, and than will be removed, and in the place of than we make use of a comma, and the main clause is placed exactly as it is. So therefore our answer will be as soon as he had opened the door. Come to the example, the rule given over here. So we substituted no sooner with as soon as, then we place the subject he, then the past participle form of the verb had opened the door, and then than is removed from there and we placed a comma, the principal arrived. So therefore our answer will be as soon as he had opened the door, comma, the principal arrived. And this comma is mandatory. It is compulsory that we have to place the comma here, because we have already placed the main subordinate clause before the main clause. Main clause over here is the principal arrived. It brings out the complete meaning in itself. So therefore that is the main clause. When the subordinate clause is before the main clause, remember, it is mandatory to place the comma, and we already learned that than is already substituted and we place the comma here. So therefore our answer will be as soon as he had opened the door, the principal arrived. We have already seen how the transformation takes place when the subordinate clause is in simple past. That's what we saw in the beginning. How as soon as is converted into no sooner than, hardly when, and scarcely when. And immediately after that we saw when the subordinate clause is given in past perfect, how to transform those sentences into no sooner than, hardly when, as well as scarcely when. So that is what we have already completed. Now one more part is left over here, that is when the subordinate clause is in simple present. That is what we have to see now. The subordinate clause, when the subordinate clause is given in simple present, the tense of the verb in the subordinate clause is in simple present. Earlier we saw when the tense was in simple past, we saw when the tense of the subordinate clause was in past perfect. Now we see when the subordinate clause is in simple present. Let's see with an example. See, we have an example here. As soon as the vacation begins, Mr. Tom leaves for the hills. That's what our question is. As soon as the vacation begins, base form of the verb is used. Begin. Begin is the base form of the verb, and it turns to be begins because the subject is singular. Subject vacation is singular. We already know that the verb always agrees with the subject. When the subject is in its singular form, we have to make the verb in singular form. And in the present tense, we know how to make the verb in a singular form as well as in its plural form. In simple present tense, when we add yes or es with the verb becomes singular. When we add yes or es with the verb becomes singular. And when we remove yes or es from the verb becomes plural. It is just opposite with the noun. With related to the noun, we know that when we add yes or es with the noun, most of the nouns becomes plural. For example, when I say pen, pen is singular noun, single pen. And when I add yes with it, that becomes pens, pens is plural. Table, tables, chair, chairs, fan fans, light lights. So all these places we saw that when we added s or es with it, for ears, churches, when we add s or es with the nouns, nouns become plural. Whereas when we add s to the verb, verb will turn it to be in its singular form. It is just opposite with related to the noun. So therefore we see here, and we already know that verb always agrees with the subject. We cannot make the changes over there in the subject. The only change that will be made is on the verb. If the subject is in its singular form, we have to make the verb in agreement with the subject. Therefore, we have to make the verb in its singular form. To make the verb in its singular form is to add s or es with it in most of the cases. So that is what we see. We have the subject here as vacation. So therefore, the verb is to be made in its singular form by adding s to it, and that is the reason the vacation begins. Suppose it was vacation, it could have been begin. Vacations begin. Vacation begins. So verb always agrees to the subject. So that is the reason with the base form of the verb we have already added s to it. So once again let's see. As soon as the vacation begins, we have the base form of the verb here, begin, and we know the reason why s is added to it, because the subject is vacation, which is singular, and verb has to be always in agreement with the subject. When the subject is singular, verb has to be in agreement with the singular subject. So therefore the verb has to be in its singular form. And Mr. Tom leaves for the hills. So here also we see Mr. Tom is the subject, and therefore it is leaves. Mr. Tom leaves. They leave. Suppose the subject was they. In that case, we have to make the verb also in its plural form. So we will remove yes to it. So that becomes leave. Yes, we remove it from. So let's see once again. As soon as the vacation begins, Mr. Tom leaves for the hills. So let's see the tense of the statement over here is in a simple present, because base form of the verb, that is begin, and it is begins because the subject is singular. So let's see what the rule to be followed here. Naturally, as soon as will be changed with replaced with no sooner. Immediately after that, do or does. That's a point to be very clearly observed. Do or does. When the subject is singular, we have to make use of the singular form of it. That is what does is. Does is singular, whereas do is plural. That is what we already saw, that when we add yes or es to the verb, verb becomes singular. The main form of the verb is do. And when the subject is singular, we have to make the verb in its singular form by adding es to it. So that is what both these words are, the verbal forms are given here, do as well as does. When the subject is singular, we make use of does. When the subject is plural, we make use of do. So once again, as soon as is replaced by no sooner, then we make use of do or does when the statement is in simple present. We make use of do or does. Immediately after that, the subject, then make use of the base form of the verb, and the comma is substituted with the done. All the places we know that the comma will be changed with the word done, and the main clause remains exactly as it is. Once again we go through the rule. As soon as is substituted with no sooner, depending on the subject, place do or does. Make use of the word do or does depending on the subject. When the subject is singular, make use of does. When the subject is plural, make use of do. Then subject, then the base form of the verb, and comma is substituted with the done, and the main clause exactly as it is, without making any change over there in the main clause. Now let us come to the answer. As soon as the vacation begins, Mr. Tom leaves for the hills. So as soon as is replaced with no sooner, and here the subject is vacation. The subject vacation being singular, please make use of does. Subject is singular, vacation. When the subject is in its singular form, we have to make use of does. Suppose subject was plural, that was the case, that could have been the case we made use of do. Here it is supposed to be does because the subject is singular. So therefore the answer will be no sooner does. We cannot make use of do here, the subject being singular. So we made use of does, then the subject is placed the vacation, then verb, then Mr. Tom leaves for the hills. So we saw as soon as when it is in simple present, the statement is in simple present, how it is converted to no sooner. Now the same thing as soon as will be now how to convert as soon as into hardly when as well as scarcely when. Let us move to that part now. As soon as the bell rings, the children run to play. As soon as the bell rings, the children run to play. Same rule to be applied here. As soon as will be changed with the hardly or scarcely depending on if the first starting word is hardly, naturally we make use of hardly. If the starting word is scarcely, we make use of scarcely. And immediately after that, as we already saw, with related to no sooner than, do or does depending on the subject. When the subject is singular, we make use of the singular form of it, that is does. When the subject is plural, we make use of the plural form of does, that is do. Then place the subject, verb and comma is substituted with than. Remove comma and make use of than in its place and place the main clause exactly as it is. So therefore the answer will be as soon as the bell rings, the children run to play. The answer of it will be hardly does the bell ring when the children run to play. So as soon as is substituted with the word hardly and subject being singular, we make use of the bell was the subject, the bell is a subject, and when the subject is singular, we make use of the singular form of the verb, that is does. So hardly does, immediately after that make use of the subject, that is the bell ring, verbal form, then substitute comma with the word when the children run to play. So make use of the main clause exactly as it is. So same thing to be followed with related to scarcely. As soon as is replaced with scarcely, then immediately after that you do or does. Here we already know that the subject is the bell being singular, we make use of does. After that make use of the subject, the bell, then the verb ring. Please one more point to be remembered here, it is rings here and that is changed to ring. What is the reason behind it? The reason is we have already made use of the singular form of the verb, that is does. When you make use of does, you cannot add yes to the verb again. That is the reason we have hardly does the bell ring, whereas it was rings here. I suppose you are clear. We have already made use of the singular form, that is does, and since does is already made use of, we will not be adding yes to the verb again. So therefore the answer will be scarcely, immediately after that it does. The subject being singular subject, that is the bell, is placed immediately after that, a ring, and comma is removed by the word, substituted by the word when, and we add the main clause, that is the children run to play exactly as it is. Therefore our answer will be scarcely does the bell ring when the children run to play. We have changed the statement from as soon as to hardly as well as scarcely, no sooner, when the tense of the statement is in a simple present. Now the next thing what we are going to do is, when no sooner is given, how to convert no sooner into hardly, scarcely as well as soon as. That is what we are going to see in the next part. So the question is, no sooner does he finish his work than he puts away. Here also, no sooner does he finish his work than he puts away. He puts away is the main clause. It remains as it is. So the same rule to be followed here. No sooner will be substituted with as soon as. And as soon as we already know that in all the cases we saw that immediately after as soon as it is a subject to be placed. Whereas in no sooner we know that immediately after no sooner the verb or the verb form is placed. That is not the case with as soon as. Immediately after as soon as we made use of the subject. Then after the subject verb and the rest as it is, then is substituted with a comma and the main clause is to be placed exactly as it is. So therefore our answer is no sooner does he finish his work than he puts away. The answer to that particular question is as soon as he finishes his work. No sooner will be substituted with the as soon as. Immediately after that the subject. Alright. Then finishes. He is the subject. Since he is a subject being singular, we have to make the verb in its singular form. Therefore, it is finishes. They finish, he finishes. So, therefore, as soon as he finishes his work, then than is removed, and in its place we place the comma, and the main clause is placed exactly as it is, that is, he puts away. So, the answer is, as soon as he finishes his work, he puts away. Students, we have already completed the rules related to the transformation of as soon as to no sooner than, hardly even, and scarcely even, and vice versa. So we have already completed all the rules related to it. And before I stop, I would like to give you a few exercises, a few homework, and the homework is given in our school website. I request you all to go through the school website and get the homework, all the questions, and solve them. Please remember, if the statement is given with as soon as, you have to convert them into no sooner than, hardly even, and scarcely even. If the statement is given in no sooner, all those statements are to be converted into, transformed into as soon as, hardly even, and scarcely even. So a few homeworks are given in the school website, and please do go through it and do it, solve the homework in your fair copy. I expect all the students to have a homework copy, a classwork copy, and in the classwork copy, let this be our first work, the transformation of sentences from as soon as to no sooner, hardly, and scarcely. That is what is going to be the first homework. Let's stop for the day. Thank you, dear students.